June 25, 2022. Moving on. We are ending the week 4 trial day in court. The week 3 we had obstruction, and then we had the validation how the Fibonacci behavior as obstruction by the modifier data associated with my effort, despite I do not have the associative will. It means that pushing and forcing something in my environment as research and think. But to do this, you must cross the limits of my private space, considering my email and all interest on it. And if you do this, and this is obstruction of justice with finalism, which in the very first moment is cross the limits of my private space, and it's oriented to set the misperception about how I do things on my private life, including the way I have my reason presented in the way I did on our live, I would say. And I had the validation in the same way, the validation here of how interest on my email account got hurted by your criminal behavior, my debitor system. And then we will check that who is mentoring this. Suggested to present this accusation considering trial by jury. And today we are on week 4. If one of the elements of our research is based on the taxonomy and the insertion of value is made by a human resource, the oriented finalism at this human resource will put the obstruction by Fibonacci into kind of a mistake about the values that can qualify a conjuncture, a system, a structure, a function, or a notation as a variable formed by elements that indeed are values, and each one of those values has specific properties. And this is the idea of OSM, Organization of System by Methods. We use it here, a regression. To understand who is mentoring the obstruction, considering the not reliable register and records on subsidiary department as criminal records, and how this can impact the international security forum considering the issue terrorism. Because if you set the misperception in the way we could have on the first video at your conjuncture, and your conjuncture carry the security against economic crimes, to keep the illicit economic advantage by illicit financial movement and registry, of course that you do illicit records on your criminal department and will impact the terror because it's inside your terror law. Pure logic. America, you have the right to convict as international system peers and players on it, operating the misperception by obstruction until the terror by do not have the same quality as argument to represent the reality. Obstruction to terror. Because if you have the misperception qualifying a terror group by something that this terror group didn't make, indeed this is an unfair stamp and an unfair argument qualifying this group at this specific situation. And of course that the insecurity from this point that had the misperception as terror, which is a consequence of a conjunctural failure, have for sure huge impact. It's a conjunctural risk. We work with audit, we did governance, risk and compliance. We did the governance, not yet. The risk analysis, and then we do the compliance. The governance is like this. We will check that two situations on the board as a comparative measurement by the same structure and design as macro and micro, having the cross-cut on micro and macro. In the way we had the cross-cut by fake records in Brazil is reading as obstruction in America, but the conjunctural failure about the criminal records to keep the illicit economic advantage and the illicit financial operative pattern by the continued based on fake records indeed will carry as conjunctural failure the entire conjuncture which has a law about terror, and your wrongdoing now is having a conjunctural reading as an international audit. And the model as governance is like this. You had a decision on America about abortion. And this decision, America shouldn't have get this get this train. You must have in mind two theories. The first one as judicial system. The first one is on Germany. It's the Hans Wessel criminal science theory. It's about the finalism as your intent that motivate your action even as abortion. And the other is Otto Backhoff, equally on Germany, that had the speech that sometimes you had the law on your system or even a constitutional premise or something like this, but based on the conjunctural perception, you will not apply this in one specific case, for instance. And why we are having this conversation, you say? Because in Europe, we will have your situation here as your constitution, and your constitution will have a situation here which is the law. The law in general must be according with the constitution since the very beginning of this law. But sometimes the constitution will have a failure and will carry this failure until here, and will say that everything is okay, but your premise is a failure, and you shouldn't consider some situations here based on this failure. Is the theory of Otto Backhoff, Germany. Here, it means that your constitutional empowerment forming your institutional system have the legitimacy walking at the thin line with stability that exchange things, and sometimes you can apply and have the and trust in your own constitution. It's the theory there. And America had a constitution since 1988. It's a since 1789, I think. It's a constitution that has stability. Brazil has a constitution that has stability in the same way. Despite all attachments that you did, you can spoil them all and not consider them all based on the premise of this constitution, which is entirely valid. And your legal system about abortion will be something inside your constitutional system. And we'll have a space here as the premise of your constitution, which is the freedom as a bless. And the space when you can have the entrance at this department of your legal system to operate yourself and do the abortion. But sometimes your behavior do not get along with the constitution despite going by freedom, but you are taking the life of an unborn child. And you, for instance, decide to do this against all unborn child with gender as male. Your legitimacy has a conclusion empty. And despite you go by freedom inside the judicial system, your intention as finalism has a criminal judgment, and you will be declared guilty by this. And this area here, as you can observe, is the area that will help to protect the premise of your constitution, because the abuse as freedom isn't a bless but a curse. And this is the idea as intercourse of crimes that we have on Germany. Yes, on Germany. We will observe now the second element of our conversation, but we will stop here and move on.